All right, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you, everyone, for being here. For those of you that have come to most, if not all, of the presentations this week, thank you for celebrating Open Education Week with us here at the library. Today's presentation will feature a couple of our students. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them as they kind of talk about their experiences with the high price of textbooks and how that's affected not only their academic lives, but their lives outside of tech as well. So, if you have questions throughout the chat or throughout the presentation, just put those in the chat and I will read them out loud at the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, you're also more than welcome to turn on your camera and ask questions verbally. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our two students and I will let them introduce themselves. And Aubrey, we can start with you.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity to be here with you today. My name is Aubrey Jones. I am currently a doctoral candidate in the College of Human Sciences Family and Consumer Science Education program. I'm glad to be doing my dissertation right now. I'm currently doing that over mentorship and the impact of mentorship and what it does for student retention and progress towards students' degrees. And again, I'm so happy to be here and share my experiences from myself and people that I know about the cost and effects that it can have on students.
Hi guys, I'll go next. I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Maria Celeste. I'm a junior business management major here at Texas Tech. I feel like it's kind of hard to follow that up, but I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for all coming out today and spending time with the library. I'm excited to tell you about kind of the undergraduate experience here and what that has been like for both me and some of my friends.
Awesome, thank you guys. So I will be asking the students 5 questions, and they were provided with the questions ahead of time. So, whether they're, just winging it, that's up to them, which is totally cool. There was really no expectation. So the first question that I have is, have you or someone you know dropped classes or not purchased a textbook at all because of the cost? And then if so, how did that affect your ability to succeed in that class?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I have, specifically when I was an undergrad many moons ago. but I definitely remember it very vividly. I myself and people that I knew had to forego textbooks because of the cost. And it was pretty stressful. College was already stressful enough. And if you are a non-traditional student like myself, it could add even more stress because you're worried about getting your classes done. You're worried about, can I borrow someone else's textbook, or can I take enough notes in class to make it without that textbook? Because I don't want to, drop out or leave or fail. I want to finish this class, but I don't have this book. So when they say, oh, turn to page 79, you have that look of dread on your face, hoping that you can see off of someone else's book. And it's an extra burden because we all know that college, again, is stressful enough. And then when you can't afford those necessities, it can make it a lot harder for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Something I've seen in my time as an undergrad here at Texas Tech, basically like every class requires like $100 textbook. And I know recently there's not been a lot of, at least in my experience, there's not been a lot of teaching out of a textbook. It's there like supplementally, sort of. However, you are required to purchase the textbook because that's how you have access to your homework. So I think in my personal experience, it hasn't really been an option not to purchase the textbook, which I think is even worse for some people because that means like they know even like they have to find a way to come up with $100, and that might be $100 for 4 classes, 5 classes, however many classes you're taking. That adds up very quickly, and their free trials last for like 2 weeks, which I know people like get paid like bi-weekly here pretty much if you like work on campus. So I think it's really something to consider. There is one class, it was biology of animals, where my textbook cost $268, just like for the textbook, and there were like no more like used options because like a lot of people take the STEM courses. So even if there were like a couple of affordable options in the beginning, that's definitely not enough for the demand, I assume. But I feel like in answering the part of the question of how it affects like your ability to succeed in the class, if you cannot purchase that textbook, you are automatically very close to failing because that affects your homework grade. And I don't think, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that your academic performance should not be affected by your financial ability to finance your textbooks.
Okay. So next question, how has the cost of textbooks affected your lives outside of Texas Tech?
Well, going back to the stress factor, it doesn't just change or affect one part of your life. That stress trickles over to other things, and then it can cause you to have, different health issues and things like that. And I know for a person like myself who's had a history of like depression and having those having anxiety and things of the sort, it can really affect a person's mental health. And that is something that I know we have been looking at more closely over the past couple of years, but it's definitely not something that is new. It has been an ongoing issue for many years in college. So that added stress for someone who struggles with those mental health disorders, that's going to trickle outside of that classroom. That's going to go home with them. That's going to go to work with them. That's going to go, to their families with them. It can affect almost every aspect of their lives, whether it's eating too much or not eating enough. It's going to affect that person very widely because, again, I can speak for myself when it comes to the depression or anxiety side. It will heighten those things, those symptoms that we have already. And I know that was a huge thing for me in undergrad. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And that took, years of getting through and having to cope with it and understanding, how to better deal and, get around. And sadly to say, get around the cost, mitigating those things and, so that we can succeed. And that's what I could say for myself personally, because that mental health aspect of the depression and anxiety, it was a very real thing for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's something that I can attest to as well. I also, additionally, like to being a student, I work on campus as a community advisor, which is like an RA here. So I do have the opportunity to speak to a couple of my residents about such issues. And we do see this happening at the beginning of every semester, where students will be stressed out by the fact that like they don't know how they're going to afford tuition, textbooks, supplies, food, like everything that they need to afford. And Ms. Jones is absolutely correct. It does spill over into every aspect of their lives. These students will like ask me like for resources on campus, like who can help me, because I mean ultimately it puts them in a position where they're worried about their future success. They're worried like if I can't afford this textbook, like how am I going to do in the class? If I get a bad grade in the class, how is that going to affect my GPA? If I have a bad GPA, how is that going to affect my ability to get a job in the future or in grad school in the future? So it's something that can really have like a trickle up effect, I would say. But additionally, I would like to tell a story. One of my coworkers, so someone who's working on campus or also earning like a supplemental income, told me at the beginning of this semester that she was going to go donate plasma to cover the cost of her textbooks. And this is someone who's already working. And in my mind, like that made me so sad that like you have to sell a part of your body just to be able to afford to come to school and get your education like as you should be. So I think that's something just to think about.
Thank you both. So third question, if your textbooks were free and you didn't have to pay for them, how would you use the money that you save every semester?
Savings in general. I think it's just an awesome thing to be able to say, I was able to save, even if it's $5 or $10. And some people think, oh my God, that's such a small amount. But no, in the long run, it can add up. Because I know when I work with different students and just even in different individuals, I always say start somewhere. So if not having to purchase that $100 or $200, $300 book can help you put a little money back for your, I call it a cushion, an emergency savings, then you can do that. And just the fact of seeing, oh my God, I don't have to buy a book. I know when I would see that for some of my classes, I was like, thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much. Because it's one less thing that I have to worry about. And it just kind of, helps me breathe for that particular class. So at least you can put something back, and I'm big about, I hate to say delayed gratification, but, when you can put those different earnings back, those finances over there, maybe later at the end of the semester when you see that A or, that, hey, I passed, maybe you can treat yourself to something nice, something small, but you saved up for it. It's something that, you earned and you were able to put back. And that's just the way that I look at things, because at least you have something to put back instead of trying to find, every nickel and dime wherever you can, because it can be, it is. College is very expensive, and everyone doesn't have, full scholarships and things like that to be able to have at least that financial part taken care of.
I definitely agree with Miss Jones, especially when she mentioned the part about having that room to breathe. We were talking about stress before in the last question, and that's something like when you can look in your bank account and you can see that like you're not going to be down to your last dollar. That is something that has no value. Like it's priceless, because that means that like the amount of stress that takes off your shoulders is, I cannot frame it into words at the moment, but yeah. And I feel like personally, like as an undergrad, there's a lot of things on campus like that we get to do, but like unfortunately that costs money. Like being a part of some student orgs, honor societies, they have dues, they cost money. So with that extra, like for example, I'm the vice president of Phi Beta Sigma Alpha Lambda Delta, which is an honor society here on campus. When you join your freshman year, those dues, like they're lifetime dues, but that's $100 for your lifetime dues, and $100 like from that textbook, you get like a lifetime commitment to this organization. And you could use that elsewhere. There are other organizations on campus who have like $10 dues, $20 dues, $30 dues, $50 dues. So that ultimately can help you get involved on campus, immersed into the campus culture, when you have that extra padding, but not to say that you shouldn't save at least some of it. As a business management major, I know you have to save money. Also, I took a hospital trip my freshman year, which was totally unexpected. So there are definitely those like things that you have to save up for in life. And I know that now Texas Tech has just kind of imposed this new rule where everybody who's not a freshman has to live off campus. So that's going to lead to a lot more students having those like food expenses, gas expenses, guys, gas. And just the things that like you need to get around in your daily life. And again, knowing that you're not at rock bottom, you're not at your last dollar, again, like I said, but also providing that opportunity to get involved on campus and like just having the option, to like do other things. Like if you need to spend money, you're not stressed and you know that you can. So yeah, thank you.
So why do you think it's important for textbooks to be affordable?
Affordability is also accessibility. We're heavily talking about cost. And when things are affordable, it makes it more accessible, because I know plenty of people who have had to drop out. They've left college because it was too much. Even if they were able to get to that point of having tuition covered, it was those additional expenses. Because I know that Ms. House had mentioned STEM classes earlier, and I remember years ago, those STEM books are expensive. And those access codes that come with them, like she said, you can't get around not having them. So if you don't have it, you have to drop. There's no way around it. There is no, can I borrow your code? No, it's individual to that book. And some of those books are upwards of $500-$600. So if you are a STEM major and this is a class that you have to take, what are you going to do? And I know people who have had to make that choice. And I myself, even, you change your plans, or, you go different routes because it's like, I don't want to quit. I want to succeed. I want this for myself. It's a personal goal. But if I can't pay for that book, what am I going to do? I have to leave. And so that's a very real thing that people deal with. And then what happens? That makes college less accessible. And I think that's a very rough thing. It's a very hard decision for a lot of people that are talented and that have the ambition and the desire to go and succeed in college, but they're met with that barrier. Because when we think about the cost of things, cost can be a barrier for individuals that do not have a higher SES. They just can't afford it. And so now they're still in that place of, doing things that are not menial by far, but maybe that wasn't their dream. Maybe that was not their goal. And the fact that the affordability of college is so insurmountable for a lot of folks, they couldn't do it. And that's a sad reality that a lot of folks face. And I'm not out of that minority myself, because I see it, but thankfully I've been able to still press through. But a lot of people, they don't see that or have that as an option.
Yeah, I keep saying I agree, but I do agree. Ms. Jones is very smart. Yeah, obviously, if you can't afford to take your classes, and you drop out, your question is, why is it important for textbooks to be affordable? Even when you go to the university side of things, the business side of things, universities are always trying to increase retention rates. But as we said, things like these additional costs add up, and this affects students' ability and decision to stay in college. So that affects retention rates. It affects the people who there's this huge push for first-gen students, minority students, to be in majors like STEM, especially. However, there are these cost barriers here that affect these people that we're pushing for disproportionately. That is a fact. I think 30% of Texas Tech students are first gen, which is about 10,000 students here on our campus. And they should be able to pursue whichever degree they want, and cost should not be a factor. Especially when it comes down to the hundreds of dollars of textbook costs, that should not be a factor. If I want to be in engineering, it should cost close to the same if I want it to be in education or something. And the textbooks are just such a tiny factor of someone's entire future. College is for your future. For it to matter right now that much is a bit. I don't think it follows the true purpose of a university. If you're here to educate fairly and you're here to promote students reaching new heights that they haven't before, then you should make affordability something your top priority on your campus. But yeah, additionally, I just think it's important for textbooks to be affordable, because for every student, we have already mentioned, that's going to affect your wellness. Mental health, financial wellness is a thing too. Actually, the financial factor in people's decisions is normally on the top or first, second, or third thing that they consider when they're making a decision. So no matter how much their heart wants to stay in OChem2, if you have to pay that and you can't, then you're not going to. You're going to drop, and you might drop out of college. So I think it is really important for textbooks to be affordable, just so everyone has the opportunity to go to college and do the things that they want to do, and they should be able to do with their degree.
All right, and our final question, at least from me, is what do you think TTU should do to address textbook affordability on campus?
This is a great start. I mean, to me, I know that in the advisory boards that I sit on, as far as for students, we've had this discussion before, and I'm very, glad to see that we're still having the discussion and with hopes that the discussion will bring forth more actions. And I have noticed some professors, taking steps to make it more affordable by even offering free textbooks. I remember when I took a stats course just not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago in grad school, and the book was actually free. I was floored. I was like, thank goodness. Somebody heard our cry as students, but the book was completely free. It was like, hey, here's your code, go download it. You don't have to pay a dime. And when we see things like that, I mean, again, going back to what we aforementioned, it's truly a breather. So we know that, professors are hearing it, colleges are hearing it. And again, if we can keep pushing that, because it is a real thing. And we are already, sacrificing and putting our time into going to college. And as Ms. House just said, it shouldn't be a factor to where if we don't have this particular piece that we can't go or feel like, we're struggling or less than. We all know that imposter syndrome is a real thing for a lot of college students, and not having a textbook, it can make that feeling worse because you feel like an outsider. Oh my God, am I really supposed to be here? Because I can't even get the things that I need for me to be here. And that's not something that students should be up against. So I'm grateful that we are here today with TTU to discuss these things, and hopefully that it will again bring forth those actions to where students don't have to have this worry.
Yeah, as far as addressing, or Texas Tech addressing affordability here on campus, I'm a senator for student government here, and I know that is something that we have pushed administration after administration to have more like open resources like OpenStax or things like that. However, I do have like a few ideas for things that aren't open resources, just to like kind of help us move towards that in the meantime. So one would be, it could be I have missed it. However, I have a really sharp eye for scholarships, and I have not seen any like direct like textbook scholarships. And even if I have, it's like maybe one $250 scholarship for the 40,000 students that attend Texas Tech University. So things like if a department could sponsor like, I don't know, a scholarship fund for textbooks or something, and we could award like maybe even like 100 students, that would be helpful. Like, so maybe scholarship opportunities on campus, giving maybe each college a scholarship initiative, something like that. Also, I read about some colleges doing like, they have like the university sponsors a day where everyone like comes out to a specified location, and like they trade textbooks. They're like, oh hey, yeah, I took this class last year, and you can just like swap whatever you need, which that's a great idea, and it would encourage it to happen, also, goodness gracious, I had one more thing and I was like so excited to share. Well, I guess we can just circle back to me if I remember it, but I do agree. I think these conversations are great to have on campus. But I know that I'd like to see a little bit more of like maybe like a survey sent out to all students, like something kind of like, not like a statement from TTU, but something that would show students here that TTU like knows it's a concern, because as students, we are concerned. Therefore, the university should also be concerned. So maybe if they like sent out a survey asking us what we think about textbooks, what we think, like what could be done, that would be great, because this conversation here is it's a select group of people. But we gave the opportunity for every student to have their voice heard, and that all that information go to the people it needs to get to. That would be really significant, at least in my mind, and I feel like it would bring about some sort of move forward or change in the textbook process here on campus. So, yeah.
Thank you both so much for sharing and being vulnerable and, and answering the questions honestly. So now I want to open it up to everyone else here. If you have questions, feel free to unmute and share, or you can type them in the chat and I will read them out loud.
Sabrina, may I make some comments about what both students talked about?
Yeah.
Because I teach both at the undergraduate and graduate level, and both of you made some very good points and made your cases, I should say, very well on the textbook side. I just kind of want to let you know that, one, that bothers me that we have professors asking you to buy textbooks and then not utilizing them as much as they should be utilized in a class. I had that experience as well at the undergraduate level as well as at the graduate level, and that always bothered me. That you buy $100 textbook or $250 textbook and then you only go covered for 2 chapters or 3 chapters out of it. And so I think that's one of the things that we as faculty need to take into consideration and that's something we do look at, especially in our department about textbooks, is that if we're going to require a textbook, that textbook needs to be used. It needs to be something that's applicable, that the student can actually want to hold on to it, and especially if it's in their field, take with them later on and utilize for as long as possible and get their money's worth out of that particular book. I want to also say that there's some textbooks out there, and I've gone to all the open source resources that the libraries provided, and I have not found a good quality textbook for one particular course I teach. So I have to go to a particular publisher, and I'm always shocked at how much they charge for those textbooks, and especially even on the digital side compared to the hard print side. And so I think that's another thing that we need to do, is universities need to have a conversation with textbook vendors and really, see what they can do also, because I think they're making a ton of money off of our students and even off of us as faculty. And I know the time that I'm writing a textbook right now, and I know the time but we're not going to go through a textbook publisher. We're actually going to sell the textbook ourselves, and it'll be very peer reviewed and that type of thing, and go through a particular organization that will put the textbook through. So it'll be very cost effective. But at the same time, I'm really concerned, that there are some textbooks that I can't, especially for specific areas, that I can't go through open source to get because of them not being available or not being high quality. So just kind of want to let you both know that sometimes faculty do try to choose the best textbooks they possibly can that you can utilize, but at the same time try to minimize that cost as much as possible. I usually send my students a list of vendors that they can comparison shop with, so that way directtextbook.com is one of those where they can go there and literally look at all the vendors that offer that particular textbook and get the textbook for the best price possible. So that tells you something right there when you have vendors who are offering textbooks cheaper than other vendors. And so to me, that's another conversation that at the university level we need to have with textbook vendors about that, and understand, is there not, because as you mentioned, Maria, about the number of 40,000 students, they're all buying textbooks. And so why aren't we providing some kind of discount for our college students to be able to purchase those textbooks, and because they are making plenty of money off those textbooks. So I agree with both of you on that. I just want to also let you know that those of us who write textbooks, it does take a lot of time and effort, and so, but at the same time, we want to make sure that textbook's going to be valuable for you, for especially if it's in a particular field you're in. I remember many of the academic textbooks I purchased, I sold them back to the bookstore, probably like many of you. So, because I knew I wasn't going to be majoring in that particular field. So that benefited me, but not very much, because obviously you don't get very much back. But I do agree with you that I would love to see more open source textbooks, but I'm seeing more of it on the general academic side than I'm seeing in specific areas as much. And so I'd like to see what we can do to open that up a lot more. And maybe Sabrina, even talking with y'all a little bit more, even about this textbook we're developing, and seeing if there's some options I'm not aware of that we could utilize with this textbook too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Maria and Aubrey, I don't know if you have a response or anything.
I do actually, Cynthia, I wanted to thank you so much for attending today. I appreciate your viewpoint. My mom actually is a professor and has been for my whole life. She teaches at Purdue University in Indiana. And trust me, I do understand, especially those niche sort of subjects, not being the quality resources that you would need to teach a quality class aren't necessarily available as of yet. However, I do know that kind of those affordable textbook options are a new idea in a sense, and they're just now like being picked up on. But not to cut my response short, but I did remember my last point, guys. So I was going to say, we were talking about scholarships earlier, and I know that I have a ton of scholarships, not to flex, just that I need them. And so I have a bunch. However, a lot of them can only go through the university. So if there was maybe an option to bundle like a textbook fee into tuition, that might make it more accessible for some students who do have scholarships that can only be paid to a university. Because I know if you get enough, you get a special debit card and a refund or whatever. But I think it would just make it a lot easier if the costs were you were upfront, and it was something that it could be billed to along with your tuition that you already have to pay. And that way people who are already taking out student loans, it would become a bit of a non-issue, at least in the near term. But of course, we want to look at making it just affordable regularly. I also wanted to say something that I forgot earlier is the textbooks that do require the access codes that do with those, and you mentioned selling back to the bookstore. With those type of things, taking the more affordable option, right now I have 2 books, they're hard books, but that I have right now, but I have to send it back to Amazon, and the access codes last for 6 months, which is weird in my mind. And you have because you're trying to learn something that you want to build a career off of. However, your textbook access is limited. So if you ever wanted to go back, you're in a new class and you're hey, this ties back to something I learned in accounting, you can't go back in those textbooks. They only last for that semester, even when you do pay the $100. And if you wanted them forever, it's closer to $300, which is a huge jump for people in my age category and the time that we are in our lives. So I just wanted to put those out there. But again, I did want to thank you, Cynthia, for your efforts. And I hope your writing your textbook goes well. I appreciate your conscientiousness in terms of students and student life here on campus.
Yeah, and Cynthia, yeah, feel free to reach out. I will actually email you after this is done, and we can sit down and we can have a chat to see, take another look and just see what all's out there. And as far as your new textbook, what we can do from there. There was one question in the chat. So how do you think professors should address the textbook inflation that has been happening?
That makes me question why. Why is there an inflation in the cost of textbooks? And so many times, and when I discuss that with them, they're not giving me a good response, just to be honest with you, because I've looked at several different vendors on a particular textbook, and I was just shocked to say, well, we've got these rising costs here and there. And I said, but yet, if you look at how many students are purchasing that particular textbook, and then the cost isn't that still way over what you really need to charge? And so, again, I think that this is something we need to collaborate across the board at the university level with all universities in the state, and maybe even with our own Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to really, help. And I think if we got a lot more states on board with this, I think textbook vendors would think about this very seriously. But I just don't know that conversation's ever taken place.
Yeah. Aubrey, Maria, any thoughts on that question from the student perspective?
I think Dr. Miller hit it head on because it's not just a TTU issue, it's just a university everywhere issue. I mean, I'm like, can I be a book author? You see the cost, but it's insane. But again, it's not polarized to just us. It's not polarized to any particular department or university campus. It is an all over problem. So wherever we can start that conversation to where it's really going to get some traction and get going and make motions throughout the state. And then, like Dr. Miller said, across states, that would be phenomenal because this is just a college student issue across the board. I'm grateful whenever my professors give out, reasonably priced textbooks, because like Dr. Miller said, sometimes we get all these options from our professors because they know how expensive these books are. So they'll give us those things. And I know Maria had mentioned the book rentals. That saved my life too, just to be able to rent a book. But like Dr. Miller said, sometimes you want to keep them. I mean, you want to have that book forever, because I know I have a few that I wanted forever because they were that instrumental just in my field and in life in general. I wanted that book because it was a quality book. I had them for years. But again, are we able to keep those books all the time? Because Maria was spot on. You get the code, even though you purchased the whole thing, you only have limited access. So being able to really address this issue, because this is a nationwide issue. Where do we start with that, and how can we pick it up and really get some motion going on this thing that we're all dealing with across the entire US?
I agree. I think something that faculty can do to address the situation specifically is add just like advocacy is what I was going to say, sorry. And I know, like I said, my mother is a professor, and I know like the time as a professor is a real like it's different for everyone. Some people have a lot of times, some people have no time to join like other efforts outside, but I think professors are people just like us, and they've been through schooling for a while, just like us. So I think it'd be really great for maybe like professors statewide and then region wide and then of course like nationwide to I know like people have like Pearson reps or McGraw-Hill reps talking to your reps about it, and then like maybe forming groups that like make statements or can like draft like just a piece to send to the publishers themselves, because it starts with just a couple groups of people, and if they're seeing that, hey, all these Midwest teachers are saying, hey, our students are having affordability issues, hey, all these people in Texas are saying our students are having affordability issues, maybe we should do something to address that. So I really think just like banding together and using, the power like as professionals and also like group of professionals, because you're like they have no one else to sell to. They're selling to college students. So but it like we already mentioned, it's an inelastic demand. We can't really not buy the textbooks, but I think just them being kind of called out in a sense of how they're abusing their target market by those who are also kind of indirectly, however, yet directly impacted by that. So I think that's something that faculty can do. And even if you just like have one or two of your colleagues, like just send a letter to Pearson, like it could do something. It might not, they might not care, but just the fact that it could do something is a lot. And I think there's a lot of people in history who like the power of a letter is a lot. Like think about how many letters or diaries or just like written word that we have that we like can look back on as part of history. So I really think people underestimate like the power that they have as a person to change something. But I think especially when faculty like band together across schools, like it could really have a lot of power and push. And Cynthia, again, I thank you for just being here and being like listening, like open to this conversation. That's really great.
I want to mention to Maria and Aubrey that a lot of department chairs have been told by their deans in the colleges to really monitor their faculty's purchase of books and what they're purchasing. I know my department chair asked me about a book I was looking at, and of course I was able to justify it with her later on and so forth, but I appreciated her questioning that, because it was about $100 book, and I grimmed at that as well, but I thought that's the only textbook I really could see was a quality textbook for students for the course I was teaching at the time. And so, but I really appreciated her really helping us make sure we monitor that a lot. And so I don't know if that's happening across the campus, but I do know that's something in the College of Human Sciences that we've been asked, that the department chairs have been asked to really monitor what faculty are asking students to purchase and make sure it's within reasonable means.
All right. Any further? Oh, Maria, did you have something to say? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just going to say, thanks for sharing that. I think like accountability is a really common theme that we can see with like addressing this problem. Accountability, like with the publishers, accountability, like you said, at the middle level with like the supervision of those faculty. I think that's really great. I appreciate you for sharing that story, because that is something that I personally didn't know. I'm not in that college, I wouldn't know, but it is great to hear that those conversations are happening, and not to like be too overpowering of faculty or lessen the quality of the education that we're receiving here, but just the fact that it is like a concern, at least in in some supervisors' mind here on campus, is a great thing to know, and I thank you for sharing. But yeah, I think also across the board accountability, like if that's something that you haven't experienced, maybe talk to your supervisor about that. Maybe it's like, hey, can we look over like the aggregate cost of everyone's textbook, because that's a statistic, that's a number that can possibly like be useful in the grand scheme of things. So I think going up your chain of command with the concerns, and just being an advocate and advocating for accountability in this specific issue. Thanks.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody here. As OER librarian, I am, thrilled to advocate for textbook affordability for our students, but also to help our faculty, work on how we get there and how we create a more equitable learning environment for our students. So, thanks again, everyone, for coming today, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody.